Hey everyone, welcome back to the Poplar Report. On this report, we're going to be going over news items that you may not have heard this week, but are very important. We're going to go through some of the top stories that I've seen in the last number of days that I think that you should be aware of, that you may have seen them over on the Poplar Report. Some of these are not actually on the Poplar Report. We're going to go through them, show them on screen, and you can kind of see what's going on in the world at large. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Welcome to the Poplar Report. If you haven't already been to the website, it's thepoplarreport.com. And this is what it looks like. It's very simple, like Drudge Report, but without all that woke nonsense and without just some of the garbage that they have on there. So we're going to dive right in here to what's going on. We have this student loan forgiveness thing that was struck down by the Supreme Court, but why would the Supreme Court stop someone like this in the office, right? We're just going to plow right ahead and forgive away $39 billion in student loans, which is about $350 per every American taxpayer. That's how much money we have just going out to be spent on this. So everyone gets to chip in $354, I believe, for people, these folks' tax refunds and paying off their student loans. So that's just going forward, and expect more of that to be coming out as we go forward. That's in addition to the other student loans that have been already forgiven. Most of the student loans out there are actually being have been taken over by the federal government, and now the federal government is moving through systematically in order to purchase votes to just erase them. All right, so also the White House has come out with new plans to cut hydrofluorocarbons by another 40%. So basically refrigerants, they've already chopped into this. They cut it by 10% before, and earlier this year, and now they're going to cut it by an additional 40%. What's that going to look like? Well, the final rule was announced on Tuesday, and it's going to cut it by another 40% between 2024 and 2028. So this is going to be limits on manufacturing of FHCs, as well as, so if you want to have air conditioning, if you want to have heat pumps in the future, well, tough freaking luck, because no, you can't have a warm or cold house. You can't have a comfortable house because you are the problem. And so obviously the rich and wealthy are still going to have it, but not the little people, right? Not us people. And this is really speaks to it. Since the phase down began on January 1st, 2022, allowances have been required to import and produce HFCs. Under the new rules announced Tuesday, the number of allowances made available for the production and consumption of the greenhouse gases will experience a significant decrease. So that's how it goes, is that they say, oh, well, this is only going to impact a few people. Just like they said that we were only going to have the income tax for just a few people. How many people now have to pay the income tax in the United States? Gee, it's more than just a few people, and it wasn't for just a short period of time. Once the government camel sticks his nose into the tent, pretty soon the whole government camel will be in the tent, and they are going to ban. They're going to ban this. They're going to ban refrigeration, and they're all out there talking about how wonderful heat pumps are. But the nasty little secret is heat pumps use HFCs. That's right. So they're all like, oh, well, everyone should switch over to electric so they can have heat pumps. Well, that's going to become a lot more inconvenient and a lot less friendly. So let's see what we got with the drought map this week. If you'll notice over here, we have a lot less drought up in the New England and New York. They just got dumped on with water. How much of that water will actually get into the soil versus how much it just flows right off of it because it was a flood. but still, that should be good for the plants, hopefully, up in those regions. But still, in the Midwest, we have a tremendous amount of problems, especially in the Corn Belt, Nebraska. We got Kansas, we got Missouri, and all like Illinois and all that. All that's just right in the heart of corn country, wheat country, soybean country, and it is just hammered with lack of rainfall. So don't expect good corn crops. Don't expect good crop numbers to come out this year because things are really rough. Good news out there. India, they took off their rocket that's heading to the South Pole of the moon. There's a lander for that, and it was a neat launch to watch. The Indians flinging stuff into space. You know, it's kind of like this big contest between the United States, Europe, Russia, and China, and now India too. India has been a player, but not like a first-class player. They've been kind of more on the lines of the Europeans. The European Space Agency doing some stuff, but nothing like real super big. They don't have like manned rockets and stuff like that, whereas the Chinese have manned rockets, U.S. has manned rockets, and Russia has arguably manned rockets, though they may be a little less safe than what would be hoped for. All right, so India's got that heading to the moon. It will land there in the next couple of weeks. We also have this coming out. We're not allowed to talk about this, so we'll just have you read this off the screen here. So it turns out that that fingerprints were gotten. At least that's the report here. Breitbart is reporting that that they have a source from within the security agency, one of the security agencies. They're saying that they did get fingerprints and they do know who it was. But we also do see out there that apparently in the know that Senator Cruz apparently is saying that he thinks that it actually belongs to somebody else than who we were thinking. So maybe not the son, but rather someone else on staff there. Now, naturally speaking, if you find that kind of thing, the natural thing to do would be to test everybody, wouldn't it? Wouldn't you just test everybody and say, well, if this belonged to somebody, well, they probably did some of it and it's probably in their system. So just a little screening will kind of figure out who's doing what. I mean, is this really too much to ask for the people who are running the country, who are supposed to be enforcing these type of laws, to get a screening to see if they're breaking the laws that they're supposed to be upholding for everyone else? They are locking people away for decades for this very type of infraction. And then when they do it, it's suddenly like, let's not talk about this anymore. And the fact that I can't even cover this story here is mildly infuriating, right? We have a full out suppression on this story going out right now. My previous video on this, not only did it get demonetized, but it actually got we have a I've seen a lot of impact on the channel from that. So forgive me for not using some of these words, but be aware of that. I wanted to get that out to you so you are aware that they are actively suppressing the story. That's how significant it is. Moving on, we keep seeing milk shortages on the shelves, but yet we're seeing also a milk glut on the farmer side. They're exporting it, and now they're dumping it into sewers and onto fields. This has come from Bloomberg. According to a report by Bloomberg, there's more milk than ever in the United States, but nowhere left to process it. So is it a processing issue? Now, we've heard previously that it is a ordering issue, that stores just do not want to order enough of it. they don't want to have too much of it in stock, and so that's why they're not having enough on the shelves. But potentially this seems to be a problem. Bloomberg's a pretty reliable source when it comes to market information, and if they're saying that there just isn't enough processing capacity, that is a serious problem. So the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewer District wastewater treatment system has been handling increased volumes of milk. They're dumping it down the toilets. And that is hyperbole, but they are dumping it into the sewers. And here, Pete Harden, the editor of Wisconsin-based dairy publication The Milkweed, told local media the state's milk supply with no home could fill as many as 50 trailers a day, each carrying 6,000 to 7,000 gallons. That's a lot of milk, friends. That's a lot of milk. And that's just being dumped out. Also, we've seen this is from NPR, an unusual place to be hearing this from. Of course, once they get into discussing the federal deficit, it's very like, how can this happen? How did this happen? I can't believe this is happening. This is this unusual set of circumstances. The federal deficit has tripled in the first part of this year. Gee, wonder why that would be. Did we have some stuff get rammed through Congress? No, not really. Yet we have all this money just leaving the federal government. The federal government's deficit nearly tripled in the first 9 months of the fiscal year, a surge that's bound to raise concerns. Yeah, it's raising concerns right here with me, at least, probably with you too. The Treasury Department said Thursday that the budget gap from October through June was $1.4 trillion. That is on track. I have a video coming out tomorrow on this, but on track to be $17,000 per taxpayer. And that's just the part that they're spending this year that they don't have covered. So really, in order to fix this, they should charge all the taxpayers out there on average another $17,000. If you're a taxpayer, if you're married filing jointly or single or head of household, can you afford another $17,000 just this year? Just this year, not any other years. Part of that is the interest on the debt is climbing rapidly, and that just needs to be paid. 170% increase from the same period last year. That's truly eye-watering. And that's coming from NPR. So, they're trying to suppress anything that's negative against the administration. So that the fact that they're reporting on that is just hard to hide. We also see the Department of Justice decide to update their website after the recent movie came out, right? I mean, we have this major movie focusing in on sex trafficking, and suddenly the Department of Justice decides to take down all of its stats on what's happening out there. Domestic sex trafficking of minors and child victims of prostitution, international sex trafficking of minors. All of this information that they had stats and figures and everything like that, they decided to take it down because they do not want people taking this stuff seriously. They want to pretend like they are, but all this stuff that was posted was up during the Trump presidency has now been taken down. And I don't know if you just saw that video of Biden sniffing another child. It was despicable. It's making its rounds. I didn't put it up on here. I think that would probably violate some terms of service on YouTube to put that video up, but it's not apparently against the law for him to do that kind of stuff. That's just sick. It's sick stuff. And why, of all the people you can defend, it's just in this upside down, crazy world, that we have a political party rallying its wagons around protecting people who are literally slavers, modern day slavers. They will talk about the slavery that happened in the United States 150 years ago with outrage, but the slavery that's happening inside the United States today, they don't want to talk about. They want to cover it up. They want to impede dealing with. It's upside down world. It's upside down world. And if you're not outraged, you should be. Go see the movie. U.S. dollar came crashing down this week. We saw the low inflation, which low inflation. Why, of course, that would make the dollar crash. If you follow the markets at all, you know that's the opposite of what should have happened. Low inflation should mean the value of the dollar should go up, but instead, low inflation meant the dollar came down significantly. And it's the lowest value for the U.S. dollar in 1 year. And it's actually worse than that. When you peg it against the Swiss franc, it's the lowest since 2015. The Swiss franc is the most closely related to like real money. The Swiss tend to keep their currency without debasing it, without inflation. So when we start pegging against the yen, the Japanese yen, we pegging against the euro and all this kind of stuff like that. The problem is we're comparing deer droppings to horse droppings, you know. Whereas you compare it to Swiss francs and suddenly you have an accurate peg on what the dollar is doing. The US dollar is dramatically losing value out there. There's no other way of saying it. And we keep talking about that, the de-dollarization, the collapse of the dollar. Friends, it's happening right now. We are free falling out of the plane. Just because the European Union is also doing the skydive with us, and just because some other currencies like Canada are doing the same thing, they're losing value dramatically just like we are. Oh, okay, well, we're not much worse than those guys over there. Yeah, well, they're going to end up doing a pancake on the pavement, just like the United States is going to do a pancake on the pavement. It's not going to end well for either one. To say we're doing a little bit better than those guys over there is really, really disingenuous unless at least you have a parachute. And if you don't have a precious metals parachute, that's exactly what's going to happen to you. Curse splat. So in regards to the Black Sea grain deal, Putin was having a phone call with the president of South Africa, whose name I've practiced, but I don't know if I'm going to get anywhere close. Cyril Ramaphosa. I'd go a little bit more with the accent, but I feel like that would open me up to accusations of I don't know, appropriation or something. So anyway, so Putin is talking to South African president. South African president is critical because that in Johannesburg is where they're having the BRICS conference. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. And so we have this is happening in South Africa, but apparently South Africa actually has, under pressure from the United States and Europe, has an arrest warrant out for Putin. So it's kind of one of those situations where they're being pressured by the West to arrest Putin, but they want to be part of the BRICS currency and security arrangement and all that kind of stuff like that. So they're kind of caught between virtue signaling. And so word already is out there that they will not try to honor that warrant on. So they have a warrant out for Putin's arrest, but they're not going to execute it for reasons. It's talk about virtue signaling, folks. Talk about virtue signaling. So though Russia has renewed the deal, the Black Sea grain arrangement, so it's a deal between Ukraine and Russia, as well as some other third parties, that they will allow the grain to leave Ukraine and be sold to like North Africa and such places like that. So they've renewed the deal 3 times. It's expiring just this Monday, I believe, and but they have complained that separate agreements with the United Nations to facilitate shipments of Russian fertilizers and grain, which was brokered as part of the package last July, has not yielded results. Basically, they got stabbed in the back repeatedly, and they are very unwilling to get stabbed in the back again. So what they're trying to do now is they're trying to link the Russian grain exports and fertilizer exports with the Ukrainian grain exports, and saying both need to go forward and they need to be part of each other, the same deal. Which, I mean, it would seem like that would be right? If we're going to let you move your grain out of the conflict zone, we have to be allowed to move our grain out of the conflict zone. But that has not been what's happening, because what they've been doing is, oh yeah, you can move your grain and your fertilizer out of the zone. Oh, by the way, we have sanctions on you, so therefore no one's allowed to buy it. So Russia is very unhappy with that situation, and they're saying you need to drop the sanctions on our grain and fertilizer if you really want grain to be out there, if you really want fertilizers to go out there to people who need it, well, then you need to stop sanctioning our stuff. And so I think what we're going to find is the West is going to be very unwilling to do so. And then we see that the offensive, this is a discussion of the offensive, Ukrainian offensive. This is from the Ukrainian forces, Brigadier General Oleksandr Tarnovsky, commander of Tavria Joint Forces Operation, said that they're operating in a large section of the southern Ukraine front. He told Ukrainian television Saturday morning his soldiers were systematically driving the enemy from their positions. He listed 33 pieces of Russian equipment destroyed in the latest Ukrainian attacks, including armored personnel carriers, artillery pieces, and anti-aircraft missile systems, among others. Here's the note. Those encouraging words from Ukraine's perspective, those are encouraging words from Ukraine's perspective, but they have yet to translate into long lists of liberated towns and villages, however. 33 pieces of equipment destroyed. That's really not that good. Now, they may not be able to see all that they've destroyed, but let's read on a little bit. Both sides are taking attrition now, but it's not clear which side can sustain it better. This is a third-party reviewer, military analyst. On the Russian side, if they take enough losses and Ukraine can isolate parts of the front, then the Ukrainian forces may be able to achieve a breakthrough. On the flip side, if Ukraine keeps taking losses and more attrition, the offensive might culminate too soon before they make it to Russia's main defensive lines, which lie another 10 to 15 kilometers to the south. Now, I'm not a spin doctor, but I can recognize somebody putting spin on something. So the question is, who's going to take enough losses? And notice that last little section right there. If the Ukrainians take too many losses before they make it to the main line, 10 to 15 kilometers. Friends, they're not making that much progress, and they need to make another 10 to 15 kilometers before they even get to the Russian line. That should tell you everything you need to know about how well it's going. Meanwhile, Biden's out there talking about how he's going to send them aged F-16s from the 1970s without updated weapons packages. Well, good luck against the Russian air defense systems that are hyper modern, that are designed to take down stealth fighter jets. our 1970s and 1980s F-16s really without updated avionics, without updated radar and electronic jamming and stuff like that, they really are not going to do all that much. And yet that's the hope. That's the hope. So there's a surge of activity of China around the Taiwanese Strait. Dozens and dozens of warplanes have crossed the air into the air identification zone. That's unofficial. But then with Taiwan, everything's kind of unofficial. Now, they used to have the median line, which is like you stay on your side, and it was just drawn down right down the middle of the Taiwanese Strait. And like, that's your side, that's our side. Don't cross it. China has thrown that out the window in the past couple of years. They said, enough of that. We're going to cross the median line whenever we feel like. And so recently, in last number of months, they've had series of exercises after exercises where they've done basically bombing raids on the Taiwanese island. They bring all of their aircraft in as if they're going to go in and bomb it. And then they break off and they just keep getting closer and closer to the island every time they do this. So over 72 hours, 73 PLA aircraft crossed the Strait's median line. So we have, China getting more and more aggressive out there as the days go by. And just imagine being Taiwan, the radar defense guys just sitting there going, this could be the real thing, but we think they'll break off. This is probably them just being jerks again. But the problem is, you have to treat every single one of these as if it's the real deal. If you don't, you could be in a world of hurt. So we got Yellen went over to China and bowed repeatedly in front of President Xi as if he's the king of the world, which is not a good way to kind of do things there. I'm sorry, I don't think she met with President Xi. I think she was meeting with a secondary level diplomat. Anyway, so we have they talked, they discussed, they were trying to come to arrangements with things, and in the end, this is what Yellen said: "We will open up channels so that they can express concerns about our actions, and we can explain and possibly, in some situations, respond to unintended consequences of our actions. And in return for this great concession by the Biden administration, the Chinese will..." Okay, the Chinese aren't going to do anything. The Chinese didn't agree to anything. The United States agreed to start taking more seriously the upsetness of China and backtrack on things that China doesn't like. Now, the United States has put targeted measures on the trade. So basically, we're making it illegal for any American or American entity to do business with China with regards to anything related to chip manufacture, computer chip manufacture, which is really hampering their trade, their development of those. And that's not necessarily wrong. But the fact that you go over there and beg them for trying to make them pleased with you, and it's groveling. And after they just totally embarrassed Blinken, they sent Secretary Yellen over there. So as it says here, on Sunday, Yellen announced no agreements on major disputes or plans for future activity. They're growing, but we're not. And that's about the amount of it. And this just harkens back to a historical episode back in the day where the United States was waging economic war against the Empire of Japan before World War II. If you're not familiar with the history, let's just hit that real briefly here. So basically, the Roosevelt administration, now this article is very anti-Roosevelt, but so put up with that. But So in 1939, the United States terminated the 1911 Commercial Treaty with Japan. 1940, Roosevelt signed the Export Control Act, authorizing the president to license or prohibit the export of essential defense materials. Under this authority, exports of aviation motor fuels, lubricants, and heavy melting iron and scrap steel were restricted, and then blocked all exports of scrap iron and steel to destinations other than Britain and the nations of the Western Hemisphere. Yeah. And they froze Japanese assets. They had tons of dollars inside the United States that were frozen. And we embargoed oil to Japan and got the British and the Dutch to follow suit on putting an oil embargo on Japan. And that was the lead up to the Pearl Harbor attack. Was all these embargoes. They desperately needed the oil, and they knew that if they attacked the Dutch East Indies, if they attacked the British holdings in that area as well, in order to get the oil, they knew the United States would join the war against them. And so that's why they did the surprise attack, not just on the United States, but also hit British ships in port over in, was it I forget which port it was, but they also did a surprise attack on the British fleet on the same day. And so that just gives you an idea kind of what we're kind of walking into, this economic war that we're waging against China. There's echoes of this in history. We've been here before. And all that to say is that whether we need to go into that or not, realize that we are waging economic war both against Russia and China. And economic wars have a tendency to turn into real hot wars. And that's kind of where we're walking into right now. I know a lot of us feel that way. We understand that we're going into World War III right now. And we're already in World War III, depending on how you look at it. Everyone, thanks so much for watching the Poplar Report. If you want to check out more news updates over on thepoplarreport.com, check that out. If you want to check out another video from this channel, there's one right up here. I'll see you over there, or I'll see you later. Steve Poplar of the Poplar Report out.